On today's show, we'll meet some amazing trans families. We'll learn the legal steps you should take when starting a family, and we'll meet a transgender teen who survived the streets and found a family. Hi, I'm Michelle Darnay, and welcome to Here Family. While the obstacles that gay and lesbian parents face are pretty obvious, there are those among us whose struggles aren't quite so transparent. In the past, many parents disconnected from their families after transitioning. But as it is with the greater gay and lesbian community, the landscape of transgendered parenting is changing by leaps and bounds.
I was born and raised in Oakland, California. I wanted to be a writer from the time I was very young. I was a very happy child with lots of friends and social activities and stuff. I was also gender variant. It was hard for people to tell whether I was a boy or a girl. My parents were very Northern European conservative people who don't have problems. I would try sometimes to ask them, well, why am I not like other girls? And, you're fine, you're just a late bloomer, everything's going to be fine. Every once in a while I was attracted to a man, but mostly I was attracted to women. And I figured, well, I have a female body, I'm attracted to female-bodied people, I must be a lesbian, great. I know what bars to go to. I've always felt like I'm not really female, even though I have a female body.
I really think that family is nature's way of teaching you to get along with people that you wouldn't otherwise choose as friends.
What the hell does that mean?
I never had an inclination to be pregnant or give birth.
I don't like you either.
Stop it. But actually, in the case of Morgan, okay, I really feel like we are friends and that we've been friends for many, many years, actually, since she was very young. When she was born, it was an instant bonding thing. I mean, her mother gave birth to her, they handed her to me, and so it was me and the baby by ourselves for a while. And she opened her eyes and looked right straight at me, and that was it. I was hooked.
Since his transition began in the 1980s, Jamison Green has become a world-renowned author, advocate, and expert on the issues facing the transgendered community.
Well, ever since he's transitioned, people come to him and they ask him questions, and he has received this position of authority that he didn't have before.
I think James helps people really see that folks who are transsexual, it really is about being born in a body that isn't the right one. He's a man. That's who he is.
It is hard on me to be constantly around a public persona and to be the child and to talk about my father as if perhaps I was the parent in the relationship, and to have to reflect on, my little bundle of joy. My first memory of my father's transition was his upper surgery. And when he had his breast removed, I remember his chest being bare, and I remember bandages where his nipples normally were. And I suppose his transition started before that, but that was a major event, and it was one that was visible to me.
At the time, when she was 3 and 4, it was a very basic explanation. I'm going to go to a doctor, I'm going to have an operation, and then I can be your dad. That's probably pretty much it.
When Jamie decided to transition, I wondered why, and I was upset that Jamie wanted to transition because I didn't want things to change. I liked the way things had been.
The factors that help the family are the person being very secure in their decision, very open to communication, open to any kind of questions.
You have to come to terms with the differences in your body. There have been times when I've been nervous going into men's rooms because I've been afraid that somebody's going to see that I can't use the urinal. Why should we be, as human beings, be upset about the way we relieve ourselves? I'm really glad about the way my body is now. We have to talk about these things and get over them.
I did get really curious about, you know, basically what does the plumbing look like and how does it work, and he was really great about just frankly talking about what that was about. We've got the best physical relationship I've ever had with another person. The parts all work great.
The more secure they are and the more open they are, the better it is for the family, because it invites the family to ask questions.
I ask her if she's thought any more about this, and she goes, I don't want you to do it because you'll grow very tall and I won't recognize you. And I said, well, actually, I won't grow very tall, and in fact, you're going to change and grow a lot more in the next few years than I would ever do, even becoming a man. So another month or so goes by, and I asked her about it again, and she goes, do Mommy and I have to become men also? No, absolutely not. You and Mommy are definitely girls, and being girls works for you, and it feels right to you. But being a girl doesn't really work for me and doesn't really feel right to me. And she goes, oh, all right, I don't care, do what you want. She has been one of my greatest supporters.
Like any daughter with her father, you know, with someone getting involved with her father, Morgan's pretty protective. One of the things I see in James is his absolute unconditional adoration of Morgan. He adores that girl more than I've ever seen anyone adore another person. I wish everyone had someone who adored them the way James does Morgan in their life, because I think all of us would be much healthier people.
In the 20 years since Jameson's transition, some issues facing trans families remain the same, while others have changed as more transgendered people are becoming parents after their transition.
And who's in your family? There's Clara, and there's Mama and Mommy. We decided to have a child before I had transitioned. So we were using conventional means to have her, and we weren't successful. And so we tried to figure out what was going on, and it looked most likely that it was Lee's age, because at that point you were 39, right?
A little older, yeah. I didn't consider having a child. I always figured I could put it off until I was in my 40s. I was aware of the problems that come after age 35 with genetics, but I really wasn't aware of infertility issues, and so I just assumed, being very healthy, that I would be able to get pregnant.
And right about the time that we got that information, I was ready to transition and wanted to do that before we actually had a child. So I froze my sperm, and then we contacted a donor egg agency.
Then I was implanted with an embryo, and I carried Clara to full term. So you could say that Rachel's the sperm mother, and I'm the birth mother, and she has an egg donor in her conception story.
The reason that I did my transition, even though we were trying to get pregnant at the time, was so that that would be all out of the way, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to have the energy and attention to focus on being parents.
I think the most difficult thing for most partners with trans people who are going through transition is that the partner goes through an adolescence, and that adolescence is often not pretty. It's just not. It wasn't for anyone when they were teenagers, but we have a social space that allows that to occur.
I think that when my dad transitioned and announced to the world how he felt about his gender, that was a form of growing up.
It was like an absence of self. It was like I was looking at my reflection, and I was clear that the physical entity that was there was my reflection, but I was not in it.
So when you married me, did you already feel like you were a lesbian with me?
Hoping.
Hoping to be?
It's kind of a lot to assume that, you know, to kind of make the statement, yes, we are lesbians, when I had a male body, so I didn't feel like I could do that. But did I feel like it in a lot of ways? Did I want that? Yes.
I think at first it seemed novel and exciting to me. I was definitely attracted to Rachel as a man because of her female qualities.
This person knows their spouse or their lover as the person that they really are, and that's what they're in love with, and not necessarily their outer shell. And usually those are the kind of people that stay with someone who's transgender. But they're also struggling with a lot of their own issues. And so a lot of times you find that they, you know, split apart and get back together and split apart and get back together once again until they find a way of coping with each other, with the issues, and with society.
I was aware of the fact that my parents' relationship was becoming more and more complicated. I did know that they were fighting pretty frequently, not in a volatile type way, but they were having little spats about just about everything.
I didn't get to really be with Rachel for very long, transitioned before we went into fertility treatment and having a child. And I think it would have been great for me to have a few more years with her in our new status to the rest of the world. I mean, Rachel seems pretty much the same to me, but certainly I had to come out.
Choosing to parent does not necessarily mean that you have to be selfless, but that you have to be extremely generous. You shouldn't have a child because you want your life to be more meaningful or fulfilling. You shouldn't do it to validate a romantic relationship. You should have a child because you want to help play a part in a developing human life.
Once, though, that I was in a stable relationship with Rachel, the idea of having a child and having another person to be intimate with, and in terms of love and affection, having someone to teach about values in the world, it all sounded like a really fun thing to do. And it has been really fun for us.
For the non-biological, non-birthing parent of a transgender child, there are even more challenges to face. Across the bay, we meet Marty and Shelley as they bring a new life into their complex world and make the transition to parenting.
Marty was Marty when I met Marty. He came out very subtly. We met in temple and...
Actually, I was really religious before I met Shelley. It all went downhill from there.
Marty's a lot more religious than I am. And he's the chosen Jew.
My mother was Southern Baptist. I didn't know my father very well, but he was a Southern Baptist minister. He left my mother when I was 3. To transition in my gender and to transition in my spirituality is, yeah, they are a lot alike. And I think that I wouldn't have done the conversion to Judaism if I hadn't found my true self, found myself as a man. I don't think I would have made that journey if I hadn't made the first journey.
There's issues that we had to talk about in the very beginning of our relationship. There have been cases where the biological mother has turned conservative and has broken up with the FTM partner and has used successfully the FTM status to deny any visitation and parental rights.
Yeah, becoming a parent is a very serious matter, and just out of responsibility to the children that you'll be having, it's important that people do everything they possibly can to secure that legal relationship between them and the child.
We can put Marty on the birth certificate. There's no law in California. In fact, you can put anybody you want.
If you are married and you're relying on the marriage to gain your parental rights, you should consult an attorney where you live and see if there's something else you can do.
If there's an estrangement as a result of either a person coming out as gay or lesbian or a person coming out as trans, that can sometimes generate anger, distrust, feelings of betrayal.
It's such an emotional time. People are often so angry at their former partner that they will make terrible homophobic and transphobic arguments in court.
And people sometimes get very vindictive and use children as weapons.
I believe that children should not be used as pawns, and that my feelings about the partner should have nothing to do with whether those kids get to see and experience of continuing relationships.
Having myself had the experience of raising a child that I'm not biologically related to, I can empathize and understand the anxiety of so many parents who are in that situation, not just transgender parents, but lesbian, gay parents. Of course, you love your children every bit just as much, and they love you just as much, but the law does not always protect or respect those relationships.
Sharing a conception story with children is a long process. And for kids of transgendered parents, that process may contain a few extra steps.
We're going to have to be able to tease out that conception story for Clara and separate the conception process from Rachel's identity process.
Marty's not going from being mommy to being daddy.
Yeah.
Sadie's only going to know Marty as daddy. And so there's not that issue.
It's very important to talk to your children at a very early stage. The earlier you talk to your children and you teach them that different people live different lifestyles, the more accepting they will be.
We are certainly not going to hide Marty's trans status from Sadie. I think as far as parenting issues go, like, we're kind of lucky to be in San Francisco, where having a trans parent is not as big of an issue as it would be outside.
But it's very clear that in our neighborhood and within the schools, Rachel's transgenderism really isn't what's of main concern or main interest of people.
I actually have created a zone of safety for myself, but my goal as an activist is to expand that zone of safety far beyond the walls of my home or the picket fence around my yard, or beyond an LGBT center. It's got to go out into the mainstream world. We have to break down the stereotypical notions about what kind of lives we lead and what are the issues that we face, because otherwise, in our most vulnerable moments, we are absolutely unsafe.
And as I grew older, I wouldn't say that I resented my family situation. But there were times when it made me uncomfortable, especially when I was starting to go through puberty and I was experiencing some kinds of social problems. And then I didn't tell people so much. There was a period of time where I kept my family hidden.
It was just something that I knew would pass, and I could just hope that there would be as little torment as possible.
Parents want their kids to be okay, and it's not about the parents anymore, it's about the kids. So the parents around us, they don't care that we're lesbians at all. They see two moms, they don't care. It's just kids, kids, kids. And if you're there and you show up and you bring the snacks, great.
There is a pressure on me, and there's a pressure on any kid who is raised in a queer household to turn out normal by cultural standards. And I don't believe in normal. But normal, according to our culture, means heterosexual. And I am constantly examining my roles in society as a woman and as a heterosexual. But I do feel, in some ways, lucky that I am comfortable in those roles most of the time, because otherwise it might reflect poorly on my parents. People might think that they offered me the wrong role models, that they somehow messed me up, which of course isn't true. And I feel that if I were queer, if I were transgendered, if I was lesbian, if I was a bisexual, that would not mean that my parents made a mistake.
It's teaching a child early on that it's okay to be who they are.
That's what we want for our child, is for her to be able to be herself.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was going to be great having a child and being a parent, but it turned out it was much better.
This is my father. He's not my transgendered father. Every time I see his face or hear his voice, I don't think female to male transsexual in my mind. Our relationship as a parent and child is not completely based on his gender or his sexuality or my gender or my sexuality. It's a relationship that's about love. And people don't like to ask about love. They're not really interested in the banality of love, which is interesting because I think that's what connects all families and what makes families able to understand another family. And I find that frustrating and also disturbing.
I'm so proud of her.
Imagine being a teenager all over again. Scary, right? Now imagine you have no family to depend on. You're a ward of the state, and you're certain that you're born into the wrong body. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
I am transgendered. I'm born a boy, but I was born a boy to transition. There is nothing more unexplainable than the feeling of being in the wrong body. There is constantly someone inside screaming, saying, fix it.
Mariah is an incredibly intelligent person. Mariah is blessed with incredible brains. She remembers stuff, she knows stuff, she studies, and when she studies, she remembers it. She puts things together, she comes up with ideas. So she's got all of those abilities.
Scarlet red.
Well, you know that. You know that about yourself. You do have an ability that some kids don't have. You're lucky.
Mariah's lucky. She met David and Mo, and the three of them have bonded like a family.
People form their own families. You know, family is not necessarily about blood. It's about, you know, who you choose to be your family and who you create a family with.
In 1993, the GLBT community was reeling from what they perceived to be a betrayal by the Clinton administration. And it was in this charged atmosphere that David Pumo switched careers.
Don't ask, don't tell happens. And everyone starts marching and protesting throughout the streets. I'm screaming and saying, we have to break windows, we have to do this, we have to do that. And he's like, well, we do, but then who's gonna get you out of jail? And I said, lawyers. And he goes, we have to do it from the inside. And I said, well, you have to become a lawyer so I can break windows. And then we decided, you know, he's gonna be a lawyer. And I thought, oh, great, he's gonna make money. And then he decided to work with poor kids.
I decided to be a poor lawyer. I've met a lot of kids in the foster care system, a lot of kids who've been through the foster care system, and they get there for a variety of reasons. And the kids that I have found, you know, frequently who are the most separated, as the most abused in the system, the most separated from their families, are very often the trans kids.
Who helps them? And that's when David said, I'm gonna help them. And I thought, oh my God, my hero.
Until I was 9 years old, I never honestly experienced the hostility because of my gender that I experienced. And I mean, I just remember this hopelessness. First of all, I think that if you can, as an adult, accept that gay and lesbian children exist, then it is already another leap and bound for you to admit to yourself or to acknowledge that transgender kids exist.
My God, this kid at like 10, 11, realizes I'm really should be a girl. What the hell is that about? You know? How do you how do you expect the system to understand that? For an adult, it's hard enough when you have an adult transitioning.
When you wake up and you know you're trans and you see a mustache and a beard, I can't explain the horror.
In 2003, David's experience with children in foster care sparked a creative streak.
I wrote a play that has actually done quite well. It was nominated for a GLAAD award. It won an Uber, and it's published recently. And the play grew out of my experiences working with queer youth. Queer kids sort of forming their own families that are very often sort of run or managed by older gay people who sort of create homes and take the younger kids in.
You know she's 15. You're going to get into trouble.
She's 16, and believe me, nobody else wants her.
So that's child welfare's problem.
Dennis, you remember what they did to you at those group homes? Has it been that long?
So we sort of, based on that model, created this family of a gay couple who've been together for a long time. They end up, over time, becoming the foster parents of 3 of these teens who, you know, are surviving out on the streets, and they become a family.
We're all really proud of you, right, guys?
In writing this play, I borrowed from the experiences of a lot of the kids that I've known. I mean, there are lots of details in the plays about specific family situations, specific things that have happened in different foster care situations. And you know that I got so many of the ideas for the character of Epiphany from you and your experiences.
I couldn't see being happy when I was 15 and 16. All I could see was this miserable now.
Non-stop abuse
If you're gay, you're safer on the street.
Come on, Dennis, it can't be that bad.
But do you know what they did to me?
Pushed down flights of stairs and having the staff workers say,
What did you do that for? I thought you didn't want to touch him.
getting rocks thrown at our head on the way to school every day. Or one time getting held underwater in a pool and almost drowned by other kids.
When they finally let me up, I'm puking. And the lifeguard is sitting there like, are you okay? So they send me to this shrink, because I'm depressed. She wants to put me on Prozac. Hello, I don't need drugs. I need to stop getting beat up.
Mariah got up one day at 13 years old and said, I'm out of here.
I first prostituted myself when I was 13, and I'll never forget it. It was a hot, hot, hot summer day. This gay guy, I was with his friend, he stopped this trick on 34th Street. He saw how young I was, and he just had this look in his eyes, and I was like, ew. But my friend said to me, you know, he wants to pay you. Really? With me? He wants to spend his money on me? And I remember when I was in the act, I wasn't even thinking about the act. All I could think about was what I was gonna spend my money on.
What happens out on the street, they do what they have to survive.
I just couldn't see my future. That you know, I couldn't see past a month. I couldn't really focus on anything but the day because things were so bad. That whole year was chaos. I experienced more in that year than I have in any of the years since.
You talk a lot about, you know, that the year that you were on your own. In a way, I think for some people they hear that and they think, wow, that must be exciting. For you, it was just this feeling of complete emptiness.
I just cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. I didn't even know why I was crying. It's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming sometimes, to the point that you just want to give up, and suicide seems like the easiest thing, you know, the easiest way out.
It's not every kid who finds someone who understands, but Mariah was one of the lucky ones.
We'll just go and take the kid in. You can't do that. Why can't we do that? Nobody wants them. If there's a kitten or a dog sitting outside, nobody wants it, I could take it in. The ASPCA is not going to say anything. They're just going to say, get a license. So I'm going to take this kid off the street and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to put them in school. You're their legal, okay, let's just do it.
For a while, I had David's home phone number. And I was petrified to call someone from that 9 to 5 social work life, the people that I meet, you know, in offices somewhere, to call someone like that for help.
No one understands. That's what we want to do. We want to help.
I'm to the point right now that my focus right now is honestly my surgery, transitioning so that I can move on with my life. When I'm done with that, the plan is definitely law school. You heard that, David? Definitely.
I've been hearing that since you were 14. I know. And God save the judges.
Alternative parenting is a bridge. It provides common ground that spans those historical divisions within our own GLBT community. The parenting instinct knows no bounds, and whether you're transgender, lesbian, or bisexual, there's one thing that we can all agree on. Whatever is in the best interest of our children is in the best interest of all of us. Join us next time and every time for more information, inspiration, and advice. And thank you all for becoming a part of our growing family. For more information, visit our website at www.andbabymag.com.